Abel Guillen, and I welcome you to the Barbara Lee and Elihu Harris Lecture Series. I have the distinct pleasure of serving as your MC this evening, and I don't know about you, but I feel the power in the room. Do you feel the power? Do you feel the energy? As you may know, this lecture series honors the contributions and leaderships and the gifts to the state and indeed to the nation affected by Barbara Lee and Elihu Harris. I want to personally acknowledge them for their relentless advocacy and support of education in our community in every facet. So let's give them a round of applause. Those of you familiar with the lecture series, we remember the likes of Congressman John Lewis and Ambassador Andrew Young, who have delivered this lecture. And tonight we have the opportunity to hear from the pride of San Antonio, Texas, and rising Democratic star, Mayor Julián Castro. It's now my honor to introduce the chair of the board of directors of the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center, Ms. Hillary Sledge.
All the work the Freedom Center does is designed to liberate conduct and consciousness. Our youth are asked to change their personal conduct to help transform America. Our students and staff work in public schools, charter schools, and with other organizations and government entities with specific projects that develop ethical leadership for personal and social responsibility. Through our curriculum entitled Democracy Education, the Freedom Center produces intensive nonviolent classes and civic engagement and develops cultural power through reflection and direct action. Many assume that today's youth cannot handle the complexities of the problems presented by a faltering economy, or that they cannot sit still long enough to engage in problem solving in the community, in healthcare, the criminal justice system, or the environment. At the Freedom Center, we know this is not the case. Our youth are taught that they are makers of their own destiny and they can make a difference. The lecture series is a prime example of the positive effects of youth and adults working together. Tonight we bring together students and staff from more than 11 schools and youth organizations that are all dedicated to being involved in the community. Our sponsors have assisted in ensuring that the lecture series is free to all. We appreciate your joining us for Mayor Castro's talk this evening, and we ask that you consider making a donation to the Freedom Center using the envelopes and baskets when they are circulated. Please dig deep. I'm excited to see so many of you turn out tonight for such a worthwhile event. And I'm sure that you, like me, will be moved by the words of our illustrious speaker.
Good evening, everyone. As Abel just said, I'm the newly appointed chancellor to the Broward colleges, and I will share with you this evening that one of the fundamental reasons I came back to Oakland is because, as the New York Times says, Oakland is the mecca of progressive thought in America. We have none other than Congresswoman Barbara Lee to thank for that. Thank you. And our former Mayor Elihu Harris, who is not with us this evening, but I know he sends his spirit and his love. And I want to put a shout out to Elihu, who hired me 10 years ago and fired me 5 years ago. But you know, as Abel said, this is once again a partnership between the Martin Luther King Freedom Center and the Broward colleges. This evening we have representation from those Broward colleges. There are 4 Broward colleges. One is Laney College here in Oakland, and Dr. Nora Wood is with us this evening, Dr. West. We have also College of Alameda on the island, and we have Berkeley City College, and of course, it's already been mentioned, the Merritt College up in the Oakland Hills, which is where we house the Martin Luther King Freedom Center. That partnership brings to you this evening another educational opportunity that, in spite of the funding challenges that we all are experiencing in public education and certain public agencies, we continue to bring you opportunities to share progressive thoughts and ideas that are so dear to all of us. And I want to take this moment to welcome Mayor Julián Castro from San Antonio. Mayor Castro, Oakland area. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
We've had an opportunity to meet and hear living legends, people who put the dream into the fight of the Martin Luther King, and I mean it in the peaceful struggle way, of course, of the Martin Luther King Center, a center that's trying to bring that dream and bring the context of the fight for that dream to the next generation. Tonight's speaker is someone who, if you watch the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, now, how many of you watched the convention? Now that's real TV, and that wasn't fiction, right? When President Obama became president, there's this phrase he used to always use, and that excited, I think, people across the country. He said, my story, here's this African-American dude with the Muslim name, my story is an American story. And I think that touched every one of us, because we all have these American stories of the ability to get to fight for peace with justice, that you can't have peace unless you have justice. And many of the people in this room, I look at all of you, you're veterans of many wars, and some of the young people are veterans of new wars for justice. And when we heard the speaker that we're going to have tonight come and say, my story is your story, that it was, I think it touched a lot of hearts. And when I was doing my research tonight, I was thinking, okay, he's the mayor of a rising American town that used to get a bad rap, he's on the way up, so I can identify with that. He's raised by a single mom. I can identify with that. He had a mom who was actually a huge leader in the Chicano movement, so she's more my generation. But I had a father who was in the union movement in the 40s, and still don't figure that one out. Not many Chinese Americans were in the union movement in the 40s. But he comes from a history of people fighting for justice. The only thing that's wrong, though, is he went to Stanford, and most of us are bears. We're bears. However, he is the face of the new Americans. He's the face of the 70% of the Latinos, more than 70, probably 80% of Latinos that voted for Barack Obama. And Asian Americans who voted for Barack Obama, 70%. And he's the face of that new America, not just because his skin is brown, but what he stands for. We're not stupid. You know, you can't just give us somebody who looks like us. And in fact, many of the people we love and many people we're going to follow in this decade won't look like us. I, as an Asian American woman, fought really hard for Barack Obama, just as many of you did in this room. And we did it not because he was a young black man, but because of what he stood for. And these are the new dreamers. So many of us in this room, we're so happy to see the new dreamers. And so I want to welcome you, mayor to mayor, to my city. We walk around the lake. Not on Riverside, so we hope you'll join us around our lake, which by the way is having a big birthday party, second Sunday in June. We love our lake because like the Riverwalk, people of all ethnicities, people of all ages, rich and poor, we walk around that lake. That lake is a symbol in the heart of our city. It is a symbol in the heart of the city that speaks 120 languages, that fights for justice, and we don't care what the Chronicle or the New York Times sometimes says about us, because we know in our hearts it's a city that's welcomes everybody, whether you're working class, whether you're poor, and even sometimes the 1%, as mayor, I represent the 100%. But we are a very creative city, and so we are so proud to have you. And people across the country tell me that San Antonio is a city that's so much like ours. So I really want to thank you for coming. coming. I want to thank Barbara and Elihu for doing this. And so welcome officially, City of Oakland. And I'm sorry I didn't bring you a key. We've been giving away keys lately, but maybe when I visit you. Thank you.
You know, California and Texas, we kind of have a lot in common, right? We're kind of like cousins. And in that we're the biggest states in the country, and we produce a lot of talent. And, you know, we have been fortunate to have here in the Bay Area the likes of folks like Willie Brown, who originates from Texas. And we are also very lucky to have from El Paso, Texas, our Congresswoman, Barbara Lee, here tonight as well. Barbara Lee recently published a book entitled Renegade for Peace and Justice. And it could not be a more fitting title to describe her commitment and passion for social justice. We are lucky to have her representing us here in the 13th Congressional District, the most progressive district in the United States. Her willingness to stand on principle earned her attention when she was the only member of Congress to vote against a blank check. Resolution giving President George Bush virtually unlimited authority to wage war in the wake of the horrific events of 9/11. She is fighting for peace, she's a fighter for justice, she's a fighter for health care, and she's a fighter for justice for all. On a personal note, she's a fighter for educational opportunities. This woman has done so much for the Peralta colleges and for our young people here in this district. She fights every single day to make sure that our students have the best opportunities that they can compete in this global economy. She does everything with her power to make sure she brings the resources here locally to make sure our students succeed. And that's why, my friends, Barbara Lee speaks for me. I know she speaks for you as well, so let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Abel, first of all, for that very spirited and gracious introduction, and also for your tremendous leadership. Let me give Abel a round of applause. Really wonderful. And of course, to Mayor Kwan, to Chancellor Ortiz, to the entire Peralta family, I just have to thank you so much for working so hard to make the city and our Peralta Community College District and our schools really worthy of our children and our grandchildren. You all are on the front lines each and every single day, and I just have to tell you how proud I am to represent you. Everyone in Washington, D.C. knows how progressive and enlightening Oakland and the 13th Congressional District and the Peralta Community College District is. So thank you so much. Give Peralta another applause. I have to thank all of our sponsors. God, it's really amazing that our sponsors consistently support this lecture series. It is just a moment to behold to see our young people with the Martin Luther King Freedom Center and the work that they're doing, their growth and their development. Let me acknowledge Hillary Sledge. I'm so proud of you, Hillary, as our book board chair. Gosh, watch Hillary grow up. I mean, a phenomenal young lady. Thank you. Roy, and Chantel, and Sandra, and Karen, my entire staff. I just have to say thank you, because what you're doing is really making sure that our young people have an opportunity, an opportunity to live the American dream. It's just that basic. It is just a shame and disgrace that in the wealthiest and most powerful country in the world, we have to fight so hard for that. And you all are doing that, and so thank you so much for that. Give them another round. And of course, in his absence, my good friend, former Assemblyman, Mayor, and Chancellor Elihu Harris. Now, he couldn't be with us this evening, but he sends his best wishes. His dedication to this community and to our young people, his dedication is unwavering. So give Elihu a round of applause, because I know he wanted to be here tonight. As you have heard or know, this lecture series Series brings great civil rights leaders, people who walked and talked with Dr. King, people like Congressman John Lewis and Andy Young, who nearly lost their lives fighting for our right to vote. Every year now, several young people from the Martin Luther King Freedom Center participate in a pilgrimage to Birmingham, Selma, and Montgomery, Alabama with me. Now we march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where Alabama state troopers violently assaulted the freedom fighters and the foot soldiers of the movement. Some amazing people were with us this year, like Carrie Kennedy, the daughter of Robert Kennedy, Lucy Baines Johnson, the daughter of Lyndon Baines Johnson, the daughter of Governor George Wallace, who blocked Wallace. You know Wallace. You remember George Wallace? When we went to the University of Alabama, he blocked black students from attending this university. But his daughter spoke about his repentance. And we had many, many more luminaries with us once again this year. And you just need to know this. Over and over and over again, people come up to me and they said this time, as well as at previous pilgrimages, that they now felt that our future was secure due to the brilliance and the passion of our young people at the Martin Luther King Freedom Center. So I just want you to give all of our young people, not only our center people, but our young people in this entire city. So these lectures, they give us a chance to look back, to learn the lessons of nonviolence as the only option for change, and to build upon the past to move into the future. In the Akan language of the Ghanaian people, and I always reference this is called a saying which is a mythical bird, looking back with an egg in her mouth, flying forward though. Sankofa. The meaning of Sankofa, of course, is in order to move forward, we have to know our past. We have to learn from our past. We have to understand our past because that gives us instructions for the future. And so we sang Sankofa here in Oakland, and we are moving forward together. As you know, the civil rights movement was multiracial and diverse. Our great, humble, yet giant of a man, Cesar Chavez, the smallest, give Cesar a round of applause. Cesar Chavez endorsed me when I first ran for the California legislature, and I was so proud of that. I went down to Watsonville, and it was the small in stature but mighty voice of Dolores Huerta. Dolores. Cesar and Dolores, who fought for the rights for farm workers, they were part of and are part of this civil rights movement. We've come so far in our fight for racial, social, and economic justice, but we still have a long way to go. Now, when we were in Alabama, we heard stories of immigrant bashing and hostilities taking place all around our country now in 2013, last week. But I know my community never has and never will tolerate this. Never. Though different, never. You know, and I'm really proud of what this community has done. And though difficult and challenging at times, we have worked together to avoid the mistrust and the misunderstanding. You, my constituents, understand that our adversaries, they really do try to keep us separated. They really do. But we say no. We say no. And in my district, we enrich each other by sharing our cultural traditions and ideas, and we know that what affects one affects all. And we all fight, yes we do, and stand for comprehensive immigration reform. You know, we do. We stuck for that for many years. For those of us who are African American, we certainly understand what justice means. haven't had to fight for it for oh so long. Oh so long. And we know that our great drum major for justice, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, and Jabari reminded me of this earlier, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We know that here. We know that. So tonight, we have an amazing man. An amazing man. A fine example of a new generation of leaders who was named, mind you, to the World Economic Forum's list of young global leaders. He serves on the board of the National League of Cities and as mayor of San Antonio, Texas. And as you heard, he's a fellow Texan. Yes, I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, as Jay Garcia was, and many I find here in Oakland were from El Paso. Mayor Castro has brought well-paying 21st century jobs into San Antonio. He has revitalized the city's urban core and initiated what he calls a decade of downtown. This encourages inner city investment. Now, California and Texas share the border with Mexico, and we are a united economic region which shares commerce, ideas, education, and people. Mayor Castro has brought many education initiatives, including high-quality, full-day, free kindergarten for over 22,000 4-year-olds, mind you, over the next 8 years. 22,000. And under his leadership, he opened Cafe College, which is a one-stop center offering high-quality guidance on college admissions and financial aid. Time magazine has placed him on its 40 under 40 list of rising stars in American politics. Mayor Castro was the youngest elected city councilman in San Antonio's history at the age of 26. 26, can you imagine? And now, though, he's 38 years old, and he's the youngest mayor of a top 50 American city. The youngest mayor. 38. He earned his undergraduate degree at Stanford University, and his law degree, okay, we have some, I'm, you know, a mayor, but that's okay. But also his law degree from Harvard University. That's Harvard University grad. He is married to his beautiful wife, who I met in North Carolina, Erica, who is an elementary school teacher, and he is the proud father of Caribe. I served with his twin brother, Joaquin Castro, in Congress, and I have to tell you, Joaquin, Congressman Castro, has hit the ground running, and he is already making his mark. He is an unbelievable leader. Now, many of you remember Mayor Castro giving the keynote address at the last Democratic National Convention. You remember that, right? You remember that? It was an amazing speech. It's unbelievable. He told his family story about his mother and his grandmother and their challenges, which demonstrated their si se puede, yes we can, attitude. Si se puede. And yes, let me remind you that, of course, I was at the convention in Boston in 2004, where our first African-American president, our great president, Barack Hussein Obama, he gave his keynote speech at the Democratic Convention. And I knew then, like I know now. Nobody believed me. He did it. That with Mayor Castro's brilliance and his leadership and his spirit, he is a manifestation of Dr. King's dream, and he is destined to do great things on the national stage. With that, Let's give Mayor Julián Castro a resounding 13th Congressional District welcome. Welcome, Mayor.
Good evening. Well, first of all, Congresswoman Lee, thank you so much for the invitation to join you. I know that I'm in the best city in the United States of America, Oakland, California. I'm even more humbled by the folks who have come before me in this lecture series. I feel so privileged to get to follow icons of the civil rights movement in Congressman Lewis and Ambassador Young. I also want to extend my regards, of course, to Mayor Harris, who I know couldn't join us tonight, but has been such a trailblazer in his own right. Both you and he have shown us the true meaning of leadership, and I want to thank you again for the invitation. Mayor Juan, it's great to be here in your city. I know both how rewarding and how challenging it can be to be a mayor. And that as a mayor you see both the great and the not so great, but that each and every day is the opportunity to touch lives so directly. And thank you for your public service and your leadership in the city of Oakland as well. And Chancellor Peace, community colleges truly are the backbone of higher education in the United States of America today. Particularly for minority students, lower income students, female students, and the work that you do pays off in spades in ensuring that we have a competitive workforce in the United States of America. So thank you for your leadership of Peralta and our community college district. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank you, Hillary, and the MLK Freedom Center for hosting us this evening, for pulling together this lecture series and reminding all of us that whatever we call ourselves, Democrats or Republicans, all of us are Americans, and we all care about the ideals and the values that have made our country great. And that's the spirit that we're hearing tonight, so thank you for hosting this. Well, I'm very honored to be back here in the Bay Area. It's always a pleasure. The first time that I came to the California Bay Area was about 20 years ago. My brother Joaquin and I, Joaquin is my twin brother, 1 minute younger, but he says 1 minute better looking. We jumped on a plane on August 23rd, 1992, and my father must have gotten the cheapest ticket on Southwest Airlines because we went through El Paso, and then on to San Diego, and then finally over to SFO, and got off the plane, and there was a gentleman there who was the son of one of my mother's friends to greet us and to pick us up. And since school was starting actually the next day, they wouldn't open the dorms in Stanford until the next day, we were going to stay the night at his mother's house in the Bay Area, in the East Bay. I can't remember the city anymore, but I remember the moment so clearly because when we got to the house, we pulled in the driveway, and I turned to my left as I got out the door, and I saw a 3-year-old little boy running naked toward me down the street, and a father chasing him, and I said, I know I'm in California now. It's always good to be here. Well, you know, at the convention, I had the opportunity to speak about my own family's history. It's a family history that I believe resonates and can be told in all of your families. My grandmother who came here when she was 6 years old as an orphan from Mexico and worked very hard her entire life, never got much of an education, but worked as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter so that my own mother could get a good education. The part that I want to tell tonight begins right there. You see, I feel very honored to be here because, as Congresswoman Lee said, I consider myself to be part of what President Obama has said is the Joshua generation. The generation that benefited from generations before that fought wars and fought discrimination, that picketed in lines, that made beds and made sacrifices that stooped over and stood up, generations that helped ensure that the United States of America lived up to the words in its founding documents and went beyond them to perfect our union. My mother was born into an extended family that was fairly conservative socially. She went to Catholic school for 12 straight years, from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And then in college, she joined the Young Democrats. And soon after that, got involved in the Chicano movement of the late 1960s and 1970s. My mother was basically a hellraiser. She was an advocate. She chaired the Bexar County, which is San Antonio, Raza Unida Party back in 1974, the year that my brother and I were born. And she always carried a red purse to symbolize women's pay equity. In 1970, there was a mayor of San Antonio who was part of an NBC report. I think it was a Huntley-Brinkley report back then. And as part of a two-part series, they did a story on the emerging tensions in the city of San Antonio between Hispanics and whites. And the mayor, as part of that series on camera, said that the Hispanic community loved dancing and they loved flowers, and that perhaps they weren't as ambitious as the mainstream community, but that they were a good part of the city. Well, in the days after that, a group of folks, including my mother, picketed his San Antonio Savings Association. And I think that was the first time that she got arrested. By the time my brother and I came along, my mother was a little more settled down. But we grew up in a household that always valued participating in democracy. And she would take us to rallies and speeches and organizational meetings. And the truth is that I hated it. If you had asked me when I was 11 years old, do you ever think you'll go into politics? I would have told you, no. No questions asked. Who likes to go when they're 9, 10, 11, 12 to 3-hour meetings talking about stuff you don't even understand? I never thought that I would actually go into public service. But what changed that was when I got to Stanford. Woo! When I got to Stanford, it was the first time really that my brother Joaquin and I had been away from home. It was the first time that I had actually ever had the opportunity to see something different from the neighborhood that I had grown up in, from the high school that was about 90% Latino. What I noticed right away was that there was an impressive group of students with such self-confidence about their future. Folks who knew that they wanted to be doctors, or they wanted to be an engineer, or they wanted to be a teacher. I saw and heard stories of folks who had taken 12 AP courses and thought that in my high school, I don't even think we had 3. And I saw the diversity of America and the world there on that campus. And little by little, it made me start to think about my own hometown, about the good and the bad, the challenges and the opportunities. And it made me start to think about how we could further opportunity for other folks. You see, I felt very blessed to be there on that campus. I felt like I was privileged to be able to live out my American dream. And it gave me, by the time that I graduated from there, a deeper sense of appreciation for all of those hours that my mother had spent in meetings and the times that she had been out at public school or at a library handing out flyers for a candidate or for a cause. for all the times that at the dinner table or the TV room, I heard her curse up a storm about somebody's opinion in the newspaper or something that flashed across the TV screen. And it gave me a deeper sense of appreciation for her generation and generations before. For Martin, for Malcolm, for Susan, for Cesar, for Dolores, for Harvey. And the question that we face now in the year 2013 is, how do we honor their legacy? What is the next step in the civil rights movement? How do we, as the theme reminds us tonight, in the years to come, move forward together? You see, my brother Joaquin and I believe that the United States has become a great nation, not only because it's a nation of folks who have worked hard individually, but also because prior generations sacrificed tremendously to build two kinds of infrastructure. One kind is the type that all of us know very well: our roads, our bridges, our airports, our railways, those things that take us from point A to point B in our lives, that literally get us down the road. The things that oftentimes as mayors we invest in, we put a lot of revenue into. They also built out another kind of infrastructure. It was what FDR did as thousands and thousands of veterans came back from World War II in launching the GI Bill so that those vets could get a college education. It was what President Kennedy did in taking on the challenge of sending a man to the moon, but investing in scientific research in our universities so that we could usher in the digital revolution that we all enjoy today. It was a fellow Texan, Lyndon B. Johnson, shepherding through Congress Medicare and the Voting Rights Act, the Housing Rights Act, all of those things that we take for granted today. And it's been, in the last few years, our very own president, President Barack Obama, ensuring that even though 7 presidents before him, Republicans and Democrats, had sought to extend health care coverage to all Americans, that he actually got it done. It is, as Joaquin has said, and occasionally I rip him off, very well, infrastructure of opportunity. And I believe that going forward, that whatever our party affiliation, although of course I'm a proud Democrat, whether you're red or blue, you're an R or you're a D, you're in California or you're in Texas, you're high income or low income, I believe that we're compelled to invest in opportunity every single American. To do that in a very precise and energetic and focused way. And I came here tonight to suggest 4 ways that I believe we should move forward to do just that. You see, in San Antonio, we're excited about the future. San Antonio is the 7th largest city now in the United States. 1.3 million people. We've grown up. In the last few years, we passed San Diego, we passed Dallas. In the next 10 years, we'll pass Philadelphia, eventually to become the 6th largest city. San Antonio is a city that is also diverse. In a very real way, it looks like the America of tomorrow. It is, as we've said, the new face of the American dream. 3 years ago, we brought together San Antonians in an effort that we called SA 2020. to think about the next 10 years in our city with one question in mind. What kind of city do we want to be in the year 2020? We had over 5,000 folks participate, either in person or online, or some people actually still filled out a paper survey. And they set a vision and numeric goals in 11 different issue areas. But the number one concern of those 5,000 folks was one thing, and that was education. Improving educational opportunities in the city of San Antonio for every single child was the number one concern of San Antonians across the city. The number one thing I think that we can do to ensure that we continue and that we honor the legacy of Martin Luther King and so many others is to ensure that no child ever in the United States of America doesn't get a great education. The best way that we can do that is to start early. This past November, we did something that a lot of people didn't think could happen in Texas. The voters of San Antonio went to the polls and they passed a 1/8 sales tax. Let me say that again. They taxed themselves for the purpose of significantly expanding high-quality, full-day pre-K to 4-year-olds in the city of San Antonio. You see, the research is very compelling that the best way to ensure that a young person gets ahead is to make sure that they never get behind in the first place. Leaders in our business community, from two of the biggest companies, to work with public school educators and university educators, community college representatives, and they came up with a plan to offer high-quality full-day pre-K to more than 22,000 4-year-olds over the next 8 years. It won't make pre-K universal in San Antonio, but San Antonio will be the closest city to universal pre-K. The thing is, it's time for America to embrace universal pre-K of all children to ensure that they have a The second thing that I believe that we need to do is to focus on something that we haven't always been good about. For many years now, my generation and the generations younger than me have heard that we need to go to college. And that's true. Even during this downturn, if you're a college-educated American, the unemployment rate is actually lower than 6%. If you only have a high school degree or less, it's much higher. We know how important going to college is. In fact, in 2010, we launched something called Cafe College, which is a one-stop center in downtown San Antonio that is free for any child, whether they're in public school, private school, or homeschool, to go and get expert advice on admissions and financial aid, and to take free SAT and ACT prep courses. Because we found that the ratio of counselors to students in our high schools was 1 counselor to 420 students. So the old idea that you get this sagacious advice from counselors a lot of times just doesn't happen in our schools anymore. But the fact is that we have a ton of folks among our youth who do go to college. They do everything that we want them to do. They work hard in high school. They fill out their FAFSA. They have their big dreams with them and their luggage. But they never finish. In fact, in Texas, at our public universities and community colleges, the fact is that less than 20% of students graduate within 2 years or 4 years. And in fact, less than 30% graduate within 6 years. Too often times, the focus has been on just getting into college and not necessarily on completing college. We need to have our young people actually complete college. And that means that we need to work with our college systems and our universities, first of all, to ensure that they're investing in the resources that address the ability of students to fight that tough battle that they often have to get the courses they need, whether they're remedial or they're on level, to progress toward a degree. We need to ensure that our colleges and universities are evaluated like other organizations. So part of their evaluation is what % of students are actually finishing on time. We also need to ensure that we take account of the tug of war that often exists with students, of having to work to support themselves and their families, of a job that often pulls them away from being able to study as many hours as they would like, or they're taking all the right courses in enough hours, but they got to go to work, and then they're so tired by the time they're done with that maybe in the beginning they're getting B's, and then they're getting C's, and too often times after a while they give up. It's time to focus on the second part of the college dream. The third thing that I'm convinced that we need to do is to close the skills gap that too often times exists in every single community of any size between what employers need and what our young people oftentimes have to offer. Now, my experience was that I had the opportunity to go to a four-year university and then, of course, go to law school. And if it were up to me, every single person would go and get a four-year degree, maybe not go to law school. But the fact is that we have tons and tons of young people who, either by choice or by necessity, must pursue a different path. And yet, they have the brains and the talent to pick up valuable skills that will make them employable. Now, I think that all of us would acknowledge that in years past, there was a reason that we might be skeptical of encouraging our young people not to shoot for the stars from high school onward. The fact is that in our communities, too oftentimes, generations before got trapped. If they wanted to be a doctor, they'd be told to be a carpenter. They'd be given one of those tests that's supposed to show you what your aptitude is, and lo and behold, your aptitude would be in something much lower than what you could really accomplish. The fact is, though, that I believe that America has matured enough beyond that, and that we have folks in positions of authority now who can help ensure that for our young folks who want to go on to the university, that they should be encouraged and praised and taught so that they can do that. In fact, everybody should be prepared so they can go to college. But in high school, for the ones who want to choose a different path, we should also have something available for them. Today, community colleges and technical training programs are more important than they ever have been in the past. About a month ago, I had the opportunity to visit one of San Antonio's sister cities, Chennai, which is in the state of Tamil Nadu, India. And when I was there, I visited a Caterpillar facility where they have over 150 researchers. And I talked to several of the folks from one of the universities, and they said that in the state of Tamil Nadu alone, that they have over 400 engineering programs. Today, the United States is engaged in a 21st century global economy. It's more competitive than ever. It requires more skills than ever before. It's a world in which General Motors actually makes more cars, actually sells more cars in China than they do in the United States. It's a world in which the skills of those young people are so necessary to their own success and to our success as a nation. In fact, it's estimated that in the coming years, 64% of jobs will require more than a high school degree. And so in San Antonio, one of the things that we've done is to combine high school with vocational training in an effective way with the business community to offer a pathway for students to get employable skills while they're still working toward their diploma, and then parlay that into both work and a college degree if they want. It's called the Alamo Academies, and in partnership with companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin who do work in San Antonio, folks will start when they're juniors in high school and actually work at these facilities and learn the techniques of the trade, and by the time they graduate from high school, can take a job that will pay them well and get credit so that they can go to one of the community colleges in the city and make a good living and get a great education there. It is a way that we can ensure that our young people are both well-educated and well-skilled, and that they can find the jobs that they want, and that our community needs for them to be able to do. Because the fact is that today, and I think that our mayor would agree, that when a business looks at a city in terms of investment, that the first question they ask is, what are the skills of your workforce? We need to have a good answer to that question. The fourth thing, finally, that I believe that we need to do as part of this Opportunity First agenda is to address the yawning gap in wealth creation between our minority communities and the mainstream community. Not by subtracting, but by adding to the experience. You know that the wealth gap is so glaring that between blacks and whites, it's 22 times greater. We talk about literacy in our communities, but how oftentimes does that reflect, or does that include financial literacy? How do you own a home and keep it? We just went through a time period where the economic crisis was blamed on folks who simply wanted to be homeowners. The fact is that too oftentimes, the problem is not that too many people are getting a home. The problem is that not enough of them get to own a home in the United States and get to create that wealth. In San Antonio, for instance, one of the things that we're doing is creating, with the Bloomberg Foundation, financial empowerment centers on the west side and the east side of our city. And these financial empowerment centers are centers that both take folks in and train them on financial literacy, but also do outreach and get into the neighborhoods and seek to spread that knowledge around the city. At the same time, we're creating this year something that we call Cafe Commerce, which is one place at our main public library that is a one-stop resource center for small businesses, where aspiring small business owners can get market research data done, they can get referrals to folks to help them incorporate, help them do further analysis, help take care of their taxes and so forth. All of the building blocks of starting a business and being able to shepherd it to success. The upshot of that is we want a community where all the entrepreneurial dreams of our residents have a support system that they can count on. Now, my grandmother, as I mentioned, she never quite reached what you would call the American dream. As I mentioned a few months ago, she didn't own a house. She rented one her whole life. She didn't own a car. In fact, she never learned to drive. And oftentimes I think about my grandmother and her generation and generations before, and I wonder how many more best-selling novels might have been written. How many more Fortune 500 companies might have been started? How many more cures for disease might have been founded if she and her generation had not had the wind in front of them, had had the kind of opportunities that we have today? The good news is that the young people that we see in our audience today, although things are by no means perfect, and that's why it's so important that we have folks like Congresswoman Lee fighting for us, the fact is that they are blessed to live in America where their dreams are more possible than they ever have been before because of the sacrifices that folks have made. And it's also very clear that they have the brains and the talent, the ability to write those novels and to find those cures and to start those companies. And if we can put aside the extremism that we see too often times, especially on one side of the aisle, on TV, and honor the legacy of those who have come before us, of Martin, of Malcolm, of Cesar, of Susan, of Harvey, of Dolores, of the folks who have helped make America the great country that it is. And if we can embrace that infrastructure of opportunity and be active about it, if we can do that, then they will start those companies. They will find those cures. They will help make this 21st century more than just a century that is theirs. It will be a century that is ours, an American century, a great century, one that we can all be proud of together, moving forward. Thank you very much.